story, and that's the 49ers. They've been down some weapons. Brock Purdy shouldering the load. Kittle returned, which was nice. How about this stat? Brock Purdy has scrambled for 8 first downs this season.
Yeah.
And he's been extending plays more than we've seen in his career.
Yeah.
Purdy talked about his athleticism. It's underrated on the team.
I think my 10-yard split, just to give you guys some perspective, was faster than Christian's and Debo, I think. You guys can fact check me. But that's what I mean. Like, I think I just have enough to get out of the pocket and make a play, pick up 5-7 yards here or there. So I'm not Lamar Jackson's by any means, but anyways, just do what it takes.
No, I think it total fairness. When I watched that Rams game, we saw this with C.J. Stroud in college. We thought he was a pocket quarterback. Then he faced Georgia and Randy, and you went, wow. We saw this with Herbert at Oregon. We thought he was a pocket quarterback. Last game at Oregon, they let him run. You're like, wow. Brock Purdy, when he has Christian McCaffrey behind him, he doesn't have to run. Right? He doesn't have to. But when they're down weapons and he has to engineer some off-script stuff, he's a nice little athlete.
So I know.
Yeah. Okay. I wanted to talk about this. First off, there was like no 49ers content this week because, you know, they beat the Patriots, and it's like there's really not a lot of big takeaways from that, right? You beat the Patriots, you better beat the Patriots. I don't care. Brock Purdy could throw for 7,000 yards in the game, right? And 10 touchdowns, and it just wouldn't matter. So like nobody was really talking about them this week, unfortunately, for 49ers fans. This is like the only clip that I've seen Colin even do, since Sunday. So, So one, I want to talk about the 49ers game, and then two, I want to talk about the mobility. And I said this in a previous video that the more I think about it, the more it upsets me what Shanahan and Brock Purdy did in the Super Bowl, because Purdy's mobility was the absolute wild card that the Chiefs would not have seen coming, and that's the difference between winning the Super Bowl. That's the difference between the 49ers being the defending Super Bowl champs and the Kansas City Chiefs being it. And we saw it be unlocked in those 2 playoff games against the Packers and the Lions. We saw it. Everybody saw it. Everybody was like, whoa, this is cool. This is interesting. And the fact that that was not then integrated into the Super Bowl as a plan that would have completely thrown off the Kansas City Chiefs, would have caught them off guard, would have made them be like, whoa, what's happening? I'm convinced that Brock Purdy could have literally rushed for like 50, 60, 70, 80 yards that game in that Super Bowl, 100 yards. It would have just completely confused them. And it would have just made them be like, well, now we got to cover McCaffrey, Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, and Brock Purdy can be mobile. Everyone was saying, if you put Mahomes on this team, if you put Josh Allen, Lamar on this team, they win. And in a way, they're right. Don't freak out. Just listen to what I'm going to say. In a way, they're right, because those quarterbacks can do more physically. So we thought. At least the way how they were using Brock Purdy, those other quarterbacks, like maybe a Josh Allen, who now can legitimately just barrel through people, or Lamar Jackson could obviously rip off, 100+ yards, and obviously Patrick Mahomes being who he is. But they weren't using Brock Purdy that way. If you use Brock Purdy this way, with full strength team, you're going to be a better team. You're going to be a better player. You're going to win more. You're going to just be better. There's no other way to put it. You will be better. And when the margin of error is so tiny as it was in that Super Bowl, actually, it wasn't even that tiny the more I think about it, because they had all those issues, Greenlaw, the fumble, right? And yet they still almost won. If you unlocked Brock Purdy's mobility in that game, they win the Super Bowl. And that's like, God, that's got to be so frustrating. If you're a 49ers fan, I don't know how you don't get so irritated at that. And Shanahan does deserve some blame for that. I mean, he honestly does. But we don't have to worry too much about the past. I needed to get that off my chest again. But the 49ers, like I said, I look at my notes. The first thing I wrote is really not a ton to learn. Patriots aren't good. And it's true. Honestly, it really is true. So I was really trying to look for things of like what I can pull away with. And it was like, obviously it was good to see Debo and Kittle back. Awesome to see Jennings. That was the other thing that kind of stuck out. It was awesome to see Jennings still a key face, right? They obviously, some of these other guys now came back, and yet they were still able to keep Jennings involved and being the number one wide receiver. And the 50-yard catch, just absolutely unreal. Also, Mason, regained the momentum from the run game, 24 carries for 123 yards. And then it's funny that he talked about this, because then I also have on my notes before I obviously even saw this, like how Purdy's legs continue to be part of the game plan. And it's true, right? I love to see that. So I think the 49ers need to start doing a few things offensively. Listen, at the end of the day, they're going to be a better team when they're full strength, right? I've said that a million times. And if you don't have the weapons, you can only be so good, right? Look at what the Chiefs are doing, right? They're just sneaking on by wins. That's not who the 49ers have to be. They have enough weapons. They have the Kyle Shanahan genius, and they have the mobility of Brock Purdy. But again, the mobility has to be done in a way that still protects Purdy 100%. He's too smart. He should not take any hits. Everything should be out of bounds. Everything should be a slide. Everything should be smart. Get the 7, 8 yards, and then you're done. You don't have to stretch the 8 yards into 9, 10, 11, 12 yards and now take a shot. You don't need it. It's unnecessary. And you don't need to have Purdy run, drive after drive after drive after drive, right? You don't need it, because he is a short burst type of person, and he probably does not have this might fall on some deaf ears, but the next level elite genetics that would allow him, like Lamar has the capacity to just run all day and throw all day. My gut tells me Brock Purdy is probably not that. So again, it still has to be more strategic the way you use it. Otherwise, you start to take away from what he also does special, which is, obviously throwing the ball, processing, anticipation. And if you wear him down too much from mobility, those other things start to hurt, right? Go for a run and then go try to take a math test. It's you're not as smart as you are after you just ran a few miles. So it's all connected. That's why when you ask a quarterback to throw a ton or run a ton, everything kind of starts to get a little bit impacted from it. So that's why when you ask Brock Purdy to do less, he can really maximize his potential and truly be a great quarterback. So it's just, to me right now, you got to figure out how much can they put on Brock Purdy's plate without starting to see a detriment to his own performance. That, to me, is what this season, honestly, at this point should be all about. How much can we put on Brock and see? It's not to say that he's always going to be a top-level quarterback, because no quarterback is. It's not to say that he has to win every single game, because no quarterback is. But that's just the way it is. So I'm trying to figure out how much can we put this. They do this in lots of sports. They do this in baseball, basketball, soccer, football, right? Like they understand, how deep can this pitcher go in a game, right? Basketball, how many minutes can Steph Curry play, Joel Embiid play until, he just has nothing left in the fourth quarter, right? Like it's this constantly trying to figure out what is the limit. And once we reach that limit, can you ride that limit week after week after week? Or is it, no, he can get to that limit, but like it really kind of burns him out, right? Like it's all this whole idea, so much of sports, especially your level of strength, it's so much of rest and recover. It's going to the max, rest and recover, going to the max, rest and recover. I mean, you definitely see this in the NFL with players complaining about this with the short rest games, right? Playing on Sunday and then playing on Thursday. You see how important football really highlights this, probably better than any sport outside of maybe baseball with pitching, where the importance of rest and putting it to the max. I think a lot of people are get kind of confused and hung up with that. And it's both within game as well as week to week. So to me, what I'm really trying to emphasize is just, we have to start to figure out how much can we put on Brock Purdy's plate, right? And I'm a firm believer that you always want to take as much as you can off, whether it is Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar, Tom Brady, or whoever, right? So just because someone can handle a lot doesn't mean you give it to them all the time, right? The Kansas City Chiefs asked Mahomes to not do as much, anywhere near as much as they did, in the beginning of his career, and it's helped him tremendously. So the same will be true with Brock Purdy. But I still don't think that the Chiefs or that the 49ers understand what is the limit of what you can do for Brock Purdy. The beginning of his career was very much babying, and it's understandably so. They were bringing him along, but it was still kind of like, at least the general opinion of at least the media and probably non-49ers fans was, hey, this guy's a pretty good quarterback, not great, not elite. They have to really just let him be a system quarterback, work within the system. He needs all these weapons around him, yada, yada, yada. I don't think that's really proven to be the case. He's obviously going to look better in this system. He's obviously going to look better with all these weapons. But I think this has shown us just how much better Brock Purdy is than people believe he is. And whether or not he ends up being as great as maybe some of the true Purdy and 49ers fans believe, I think that the non-Purdy fans, the non-49ers fans, have to admit that he's at the very least better than what they had originally thought. So again, put some more on his plate, figure out what the limitations are, you know, where you reach to that max capacity, and then you pull it back a little bit, and then you figure out when you need to rely on that, right? Like in the playoffs, NFC Championship game, it's like, all right, Purdy, we need you to now, we're going to have to put a little bit more on your plate right now in this moment, right? Like it's a constant juggling act, right? There's never any 100% right answer, right? It's like when you unlock Purdy and let's say he rushes for 3 first downs in a game and runs for 50 yards, and it's like, wow, that was amazing, and they won 24-7. It's like, okay, great. Doesn't mean that that's the formula now. It doesn't mean, well, they're just gonna have to do that every single game they win, right? No, it worked for that game, it worked in that moment, but it doesn't mean it's always the solution. So I think they just need to get a little bit more creative and a little bit more exploratory with figuring out what can we do with Purdy to continue to maximize his talents? Because we do this with all other quarterbacks, right? You do this with Josh Allen. You do this with Lamar Jackson. You do this with Patrick Mahomes. You do this with all the greats. It's how can we maximize their talents, like I said, as well as take some off their plate. But for the longest time with Purdy, it never felt like that they were trying to maximize his talents. It was more like, we just need to maximize this team. How do we maximize Debo? How do we maximize Christian McCaffrey? How do we maximize Kittle, Ayuk? Now it's trying to figure out, how do we maximize Brock Purdy? But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Brock Purdy's mobility, just the evolution of his game this season, how successful he's been without all the Avengers? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I'd absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much, and see you next time.